Greetings, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. There's a scene in a DC movie. I know it's a DC movie, so every time I reference anything DC, there are Marvel people out there who get annoyed. But it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's Batman Begins. At the very end of Batman Begins, which I have a very hot take, unpopular opinion, is a better Batman movie than The Dark Knight. Not a better villain. The Joker will always be the best Christopher Nolan villain by far, but a better Batman movie, a better overall structure of the Batman lore, who was, along with Spider-Man, my favorite superhero growing up and remains so as an adult. But there's a scene where Batman is meeting with Commissioner Gordon and talking about escalation of firearms with criminals, where Christopher Nolan, Commissioner Gordon looks at Batman and says, well, aren't you worried about escalation? We get semi-automatics, they get automatics. Might seem like a random way to start this video, but I promise you it has some importance when it comes to people cheating in the Marvel Casino of Champions. You see, I have seen for years, this is especially true for Arena bot software, but people will brag that their software is so undetectable, and every time Kabam makes an advance, they make an advance on their own software, that they're always a step ahead, or 2 steps ahead, or 10 steps ahead. And I feel for Kabam, because in my interview with Kabam Broccoli, one of the things he emphasized is that the team really does care about fair play. It's just that they have limited resources, and sometimes they can't outsmart cheaters. This has led to them sometimes just throwing their hands up in the air and saying, I don't know what we can do about this, and so we've got to suspend something like Legends runs because of fears of piloting in, say, Act 7. Well, we all woke up to 2 warnings that were almost word for word reminiscent of 2018, 2019 in the game when Alliance War season started and there was a huge fear of piloting an Alliance War. In fact, it wasn't just a fear, it was a reality. And look, I say that to say that I am not so naive as to think that it's still not happening in 2021. In fact, people, going back to the Dark Knight escalation conversation, have gotten so smart about ways to do it with IP addresses and other ways of like hiding your location that even though I don't really understand it and I feel ignorant when it comes to discussing ways to get around servers and things like that, because that's just not something in my expertise, and I haven't wanted to do a whole lot of research on it because I don't plan to ever do it myself. So I feel like it's like learning how to rob a bank when you never want to steal something. But Kabam does know that this goes on, and of course, it is easy sometimes when you're looking at, especially your Alliance War map, to see some shady things going on, particularly with defenders' lack of losing health. I've heard so many stories about that in the past several years that they could fill up an entire hour-long video. But let's look at this first of 2 messages. Warning, account sharing. In an effort to keep the contest fair and competitive, we will be taking punitive action against account sharing practices in Alliance Wars effective immediately. And you know it's serious when the words effective immediately are in yellow. So I see that, and this makes me think of baseball with the steroid use. They came out in the early 2000s. I know this is like an analogy-heavy video, but they came out in the early 2000s and talked about how they were going to stop steroid use. But then, like, the first offense, which is a major deal, was like a 10-game suspension. It was just total slap on the wrist, kind of a joke. And it wasn't until like the 3rd suspension that you got suspended for a whole year. And so people kept saying, well, that's not going to deter them. Well, let's look at what Kabam talks about when it comes to suspensions regarding this account sharing illegal behavior. Sharing your account for the purposes of having other individuals complete fights for you is a violation of our terms of service. Many of you have reported this tactic to us and expressed concern that this creates an unfair playing field in Alliance Wars, which of course it does, but again, it's been happening and continues to happen since the start of Alliance War and especially Alliance War seasons. Starting now, we will be monitoring Alliance Wars closely for egregious examples of this behavior. Alliances found in violation will have their Alliance War rating reduced. So if you catch somebody, and look, I want to say this because this is always a hot topic. I have a lot of sympathy for people, including my own alliance, who have to recruit. A lot of times, especially right now with so many people burnt out of a broken game, you're taking huge risks on people just to have a full alliance. You don't know their backgrounds. They can have the most impressive roster on earth, and you don't know, do they just buy that account? Do they actually know how to play the players that they've ranked up? Are they modding? And so sometimes you bring in somebody, and they'll be there for like half an alliance war, and then they'll either leave your alliance immediately. I've seen that story so many times. Or you'll have to kick them because you know something shady's going on, and you don't want that shadiness to be a part of your alliance. And then kabam, slaps your alliance on the wrist and docks you alliance war rating, even though the guy was there for like 3 days, because he basically just came in, nuked your reputation, and then left. And I don't know what there is to do about that. I don't know how you prevent that from happening. That's part of the risk. I mean, it is like an interview process. It's like giving somebody your resume when they bring you into your alliance. You hope that they're not lying on their resume, but you don't know for sure unless you've got multiple letters of recommendation or sources that can back somebody's character. It's all a risk. So continued violations. So we're talking about second, third, fourth events of this policy may result in penalties to seasons, events, points, and account bans. So one of the first problems of this post for the community is going to be continued violations being what ends up having account bans. And there are two different kinds of account bans. There's temporary and there's permanent. Sometimes temporary lead to permanent, but not always. If Kabam thinks that somebody is modding, especially Alliance War, or piloting, and they want to make an example out of them, they've got to be harsher. They've got to be willing to not just slap them on the wrist. But I would say at first offense, and I'm going to probably get some pushback for this, but I don't care. First offense should be a minimum 30-day ban. 30 days. You miss a whole month of the contest. Alliance War rating reduced is fine, I guess, but if you suspend somebody for a month from the Marvel Casino of Champions, that's so much time, especially now with the Summoner Camp rewards and so many other things that, I mean, imagine if somebody missed every What If Nexus Crystal opportunity purchase. They might just walk away from the game. But it would definitely make you think twice. The punishment has to be so severe that you're going to have to ask yourself, do I really want to risk this? Because right now, on the first offense, it just seems like the answer is, yeah, I'll take the risk because I'm not really that worried. And if mainly the alliance that I'm leaving or that kicks me gets punished, then maybe it can actually be used as, because I've also seen this story. It's a crazy story. Let's say somebody is rivals with another alliance at the top of MCFC, and they really just dislike this alliance. They think they're a bunch of cheaters or scumbags, or maybe it's just your rival and you don't like them for whatever reason. And you have somebody that's going to go in and intentionally sabotage their alliance by doing something that's against the terms of service and then leaving. Well, I hate to tell you this, but it's happened before. And so this also, I'm sure, can have an effect on trust issues with strangers in general. How could it not? It's also worth noting that was the first of two messages. There's also a warning against the use of third-party software. We would like to remind summoners the use of any third-party software scripts that modifies or influences the game in any way is strictly prohibited in all game modes, including story, content, arenas, and competitive modes. Now, we have documented on this channel so many times that I'm sure it's just annoying to even see videos about it at this point, which is why I haven't made as many, because I don't want to just keep repeating a point to the ground. I wish I didn't have to, right? I wish you could log into the arena and it's just obvious that there aren't a bunch of bots at the top of the list. I still say these people don't actually want to cheat in plain sight, but if you run a bot 24/7 for 3 days in ways that a human being could never actually do, you're going to end up being at the top of the score sheet by default because you're able to put up a score that no human can compete with reasonably given sleep and work and bathroom breaks and food, etc. And yet we've seen it happen for years, even though Kabam has made strides. And to be fair, every time I bring this up, somebody's like, you never give Kabam credit. They've really improved. They have. No, they are much better at catching arena cheaters now than they were even a year ago, and they should be applauded for that. But it's that Dark Knight analogy at the beginning of this video where Kabam turns up their software to semi-automatics, and then the bot hosts figure out a way to fire automatics. And so it just feels like the goalpost is constantly shifted over and over again to avoid detection by Kabam. So This also includes another reference to Alliance War. Summoners that make use of these applications of Alliance War could have a negative impact on their entire alliance. This can include a ban for the offending summoner, as well as a loss of points from the season score. And I realize they use the word can as well because sometimes, on rare occasion, like when Quake players would get bans because Quake was so good that it looked like they were modding just because she could never get hit or take any kind of health damage, particularly when you're not running suicides. And that would happen for so many Quake players, and so they had to restore those accounts and apologize. That also happened in the history of this game. But in general, if you have overwhelming evidence that somebody's cheating, and for Arena especially, it ain't that hard to see the evidence, you just got to at least ban them for 30 days. At least ban them for 30 days. Because, of course, Kabam then complains that they lose a bunch of money at the end of the year for the gifting event because those same accounts that have been modding the Arena sell discounted greater gifting crystals and other things to summoners in exchange for cash. And so Kabam's losing a ton of money by this, and so it is in their financial best interest to put a stop to it, as always. Alright, well, I know that this video was longer than normal, but I wanted to cover both points and talk about the history of these things, especially for people tuning into this channel that don't know the history because you haven't been playing this game like me for 5 years. Let me know in the comments below if you think it's actually realistic for Kabam to be able to do anything. I really am trying to give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't want this cheating to go on, but they can only do so much, and the people who are running these cheating software accounts are often so sophisticated with programming and coding that they just always seem to be 1 or 1,000 steps ahead of Kabam no matter how hard they try, and that makes it tough to really feel as optimistic about these things, particularly the Arena, like I wanted to be years ago. Have a great rest of your weekend, YouTube. Thanks for watching.